Khorne here, and today I will be showing you how to win battles and campaigns for that matter, while mostly using trashy units in your armies, this time featuring zombies. I will also give you a detailed explanation as to why you should build these kinds of armies in your campaigns. So why would you want the majority of your armies to be low tier garbage? It is because these units are some of the best units in the game, as they are cheap to maintain, which lets you field many more armies than you otherwise would be able to if you had just recruited an army filled with standard units. To understand on an even more fundamental level why trashy units are extremely powerful, you first have to understand how to win battles in general. And if you think you don't require an explanation on how to win battles, just skip ahead. So in this game, the way you win battles is by inflicting army losses. If you don't know what army losses is, whenever you see the enemy army just shatter and run away from the battlefield, it is because they got the army losses debuff, which is a -100 leadership debuff. This debuff is applied after you've destroyed enough value from the opposing army, or if your army is so much stronger than your opponent's that the game concludes that your opponent can no longer win and therefore gives them the army losses debuff. Going even further in, what is army value and how is it calculated? You will notice, if you aren't playing on Battle Realism, that you have a balance of power bar at the top of your screen. This represents the rough estimate of difference in strength between yours and the enemy's forces. The more value you accumulate by killing enemy units, the more the bar fills in your favor and vice versa. Now, even though all of your units are valued when accounting for balance of power, not all of them are valued the same. The higher the tier and the more stats a unit has, the higher it is valued. So for example, a zombie unit won't be valued anywhere nearly as high as a Blood Knight unit. What this means is that if you end up taking casualties on your low value units, the balance of power will shift very little in the favor of your enemy. And that way you can use your low value units to soak up damage and tie up the enemy high value troops, while your own high value troops eliminate your opponent's high value units unimpeded and win you the battle. Now, this is all the very basics of how to win battles, but for some races this can be taken to the absolute extreme. In this example here, we have zombies. Now, zombies are a tier 0 unit, meaning that you can recruit them from any settlement. They can also be recruited via the Raise the Dead mechanic from every province. They have also very low stats, but they have a very large health bar and an extremely low upkeep cost, which are the main characteristics that make zombies so amazing. Because you can recruit them anywhere at any time, they will always be available to you, and recruiting them will cost you next to nothing. So if you ever end up losing an entire army of zombies, really the only loss there will be if you also lose the Lord leading them, as you can summon an entirely new zombie horde more or less instantly. You can also buff zombies by ludicrous amounts through your technology tree and with Hellman Gorst, where you just make zombies completely unkillable. So on to how you actually use zombies to win battles. And there is a single strategy you will use, which is blobbing. Blobbing is when you place your units on top of one another so that they are as close together as they possibly can be. The benefits to doing this is that your units are much harder to kill in melee, and since the vampire counts have units that buff nearby units, by blobbing up you can provide that buff essentially to every unit in your blob, making them perform much better in combat. These buffs include bonuses to melee attack and defense, and the most important of all, healing. The vampire counts have a lot of units in their roster that provide you with passive area of effect healing. And healing in Warhammer 3 has been changed to be a percentage of a unit's health, meaning the more health your unit has, the faster you can heal it, which synergizes with your blobs even further. But blobbing isn't always an optimal strategy. You see, if the enemy has some area of effect damage spells, artillery, or units that dish out explosion damage in general, you will have a very bad time dealing with them, as they will just be able to kill your blob rather quickly. So what you can do in these situations is, for starters, hide in forests. Trees in this game represent obstacles. So any missiles going through forests will be stopped by the trees, thereby making enemy range units less effective. The next thing you will do is spread out your blob as much as you can, while also buffing them as much as you can. Even though you won't be able to avoid the damage completely, you will slow down the rate at which the enemy can kill your units, and if you remember my explanation on winning battles, there is another thing you need to know. And that is that the ammunition of ranged units is also counted towards the balance of power. Since an artillery piece, like say a Hellstorm rocket battery, is a very highly valued unit in terms of balance of power, if it uses most of its ammunition to kill thousands of zombies, it will still not get its value back, because of just how low value zombies really are. Meaning the enemy will still be losing to you even if they are killing thousands of your units. And finally, the last thing you can do in these situations is to simply kill the problematic units, usually with your flying lords, heroes, or any other units you have available. Just go ahead of the blob and either Wind of Death the enemy ranged, kill them with spells, or summon zombies atop of enemy units to try and decrew their artillery pieces. The third option when dealing with problematic units is usually the best option, but most times the combination of all three methods is needed for you to win battles. Now, zombies themselves aren't going to win your battles, in most cases. Instead, what you need in combination with zombies are units that are going to perform the role of killing enemy units and keeping your zombie horde alive. For the supportive units, the best units you can get are corpse guards and necromancers. It's usually best if you get a necromancer on an unholy lodestone, as they can just heal your blobs by ridiculous amounts. One is usually enough for your armies, but sometimes you can benefit from having multiple necromancers. When it comes to damage dealers, you have very good options. The best damage dealer in your armies is going to be the lords leading them. Wind of Death is one of the best spells in the game when it comes to dishing out damage, and in combination with the enemy blobbing up around your units, you can get some amazing uses out of it. Most of your lords are also very strong melee combatants, and if they have access to a flying mount, they can usually snipe any problematic spellcasters the enemy might have. Aside from lords, vampire heroes also have the same sort of role, where they are decent melee combatants with decently strong spellcasting. You usually don't need more than one to support your lord. White Kings are also a very strong option for your armies, as they are good when dealing with enemy large units, considering that spellcasting has very little impact on a giant. When it comes to units themselves, the best damage dealing units are the Mortis engines, as aside from dealing damage in an area of effect when in melee, they also heal your blob, making them one of the best units you can get for your blobs. I usually only get one in my armies, as they can be very expensive. Terrorgeists are also a very good option when it comes to dealing with enemy large units, so if you can't get a White King, get a Terrorgeist, and one is again usually enough. Finally, cavalry and fast-moving units like, say, bats, are really good for killing enemy range units while the enemy front line is engaged with your blob. Depending on the value of the unit, if it's, say, a dire wolf, I would bring 2 or more to the battlefield, but if it's a blood knight, I would bring only 1. I don't recommend bringing all 3 of these options in every single one of your armies. Instead, I would recommend you tailor your armies to the enemy you will be fighting. If you're facing a faction with loads of melee infantry and cavalry, bring a Mortis engine. If you're fighting a faction with loads of range units, bring cavalry. And if you're fighting an enemy which has a lot of big monsters, bring a Terrorgeist. Now, you might be thinking, why not do the same but with higher tier infantry, such as Graveguard or even Skellies for that matter. But the thing you have to take into consideration is that Graveguard cost 10 times as much as zombies, meaning they have 10 times the value. So if a artillery piece was targeting a Graveguard, it will actually get good value for its ammunition. They are also not as durable as zombies, and I'm not talking about their stats in terms of melee attack, melee defense, armor, etc. Instead, I'm talking about their health and health regeneration cap. You see, most units in the game can regenerate up to 70% of their health. But with vampire counts, you can increase this in a multitude of different ways, especially for zombies, where you have a technology that gives them a 100% healing cap increase And if you get Helm and Gorst, you also get another insane 500% healing cap. Skellies and Graveguard have no such bonuses. So over the course of a battle, if you manage your blob properly, your zombies will be able to outlast any other line-holding units in your roster, all while providing no value to the enemy and making it easier to inflict army losses to them. When it comes to the campaign side of things, zombies are insanely good because of something I have already mentioned multiple times, and that is their upkeep cost. For the price of a single Graveguard, you can have half an army of zombies. And for the price of 2 Graveguard, you can have a full stack of zombies. Really, this way of building your armies as the vampire counts just allows you to field as many armies as you could possibly want for very little cost. And as another bonus, the more armies you have active and fighting enemies, the more lords you will be able to level up. And as we have already mentioned, your lords are your best units when it comes to playing the vampire counts. So the more high-level lords you have, the stronger your campaign will be. So really, this playstyle is how the vampire counts were meant to be played. Now, I understand that not everybody is interested in this sort of playstyle, and by recruiting mostly zombies, you will have to fight the majority of your battles manually. But I honestly enjoy playing these kinds of battles, more so than regular battles. As in regular battles, it is very intense to micro everything properly, and most of the times you just end up losing units because of your split attention. But with an army such as this, you can simply forget about 90% of them and focus on the really important units. So you can get hundreds, if not thousands of kills with them in a very satisfactory manner. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe for future content. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.
Khorne sword fights as one.